Wow, hey, hello. I'm back with another little analysis/theory video. I finished streaming Chapter 5 a little while ago, and you're probably looking at my ADHD gameplay right now. Apologies if I just run in circles for a while. I have to say, I had a lot of fun with this one. The platforming segments were great, and Flowery might be one of my favorite characters in the whole series now. Of course, the plot, especially with the addition of the new shop dialogue recently, has me, theorizing all over again. And I feel like everyone is doing that right now, if you just go on Twitter for like 5 seconds. I just wanted to share some nonsensical theories with you. This is not going to be some kind of like crazy deep dive like all the amazing videos on YouTube right now. Just a little video game, rant from just a fan. So either way, I hope you enjoy hearing me yap. FYI, a lot of this is going off of memory from what I've played, so bear with me. Let's get to it. Theory 1, the Deltarune program/Gaster theory. I wanted to get this one out of the way first because it's the biggest one, and I'm sure most of you are on board with a fair amount of it. When Chapter 1 was released as a standalone thing, the game was titled Survey Program in all capitals, or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was called that. Whenever you're on a chapter file select screen, instead of quit game, it says end program. Since maybe the second chapter, I thought that Deltarune was like a meta game world that someone, maybe Gaster, used as a way to observe the effects of determination and how it can break the world they live in. And whoever the voice is at the start of the game seems to take a scientific interest in you and what you can do, which I mainly noticed during the Roaring Night fight. Which, by the way, if you lose and go back to the fight spot, there's a save spot there now. And then you have the voice talking about how even though you lost, you chose to persevere. It seemed interested in how the fight would turn out due to you being determined, which is kind of a big word in this series. Of course, there's other details like the shelter being the Gaster noise slowed down, or the fact that when you try to use your phone in the Dark Worlds, you hear the same Gaster noise. Which plays well into his Undertale lore of him being, everywhere and listening. I do believe that Gaster, or whoever it is, somehow ascended to a level that's close to us, but not quite us. In the sense that they see everyone that they knew as like programmed NPCs, just characters in a game. He could have cared about these people before, but now he just sees them as literal sprites and assets, Gaster, or that person, realizes that everyone in that hometown is locked into a certain schedule or way of life, and that truly no one's choices matter in that regard. And it seems like making choices for yourself can lead to really good things or really bad things in this world. For example, we have the Chapter 5 Weird Route, which, oh my goodness, it was short, but there was so much there. Noelle starts telling you that she noticed you found a way to stop being Chris, and now she found a way to break out of the confines of quote-unquote Noelle. Not the exact wording, just going off of memory, apologies. When they walk into the lake, the game seemingly starts breaking, as if they're leaving the boundaries of the game. And oh my god, it's so loud. It is so loud. The stims were hitting. It eventually leads to a scene of like a computer screen and CRT looking screen telling you to insert Chapter 7 Side B. Super meta and an incredibly cool way to deliver the narrative, by the way. I really do think hometown is all there is in this world. Like, it is just hometown and there's no outer boundaries. I was actually thinking about this even back when Chapter 3 and 4 were out. I have to sneeze. Here I am, post-sneeze. I'm still alive. Thank you for your concern. Anyways, Asriel being in college feels kind of like a genuine cop-out. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's real that he's, like, just actually in college. I do think he's maybe gone from the game, maybe on a different layer, a different meta layer, possibly even looking for deaths, but we'll get to that. I have more I want to explore with this theory, though, because there's a lot. Chapter 3 and 4 have some crazy egg rooms. In Chapter 3, you have a place called Man Country. At least I think that's the Chapter 3 one. And it looks like a retro Game Boy world. You got the green, the green scale. If I recall, you get two pretty crazy lines here. One NPC tells you that all copies are monochrome, and another person, possibly the man behind the tree, I actually don't fully remember, but they say that the world used to look more like this world. And it's not the first time we've heard this. If I recall, in Chapter 3, there's a guy you can talk to. Once again, my memory is destroying me, but it was like a big mouth-looking guy or something, or maybe he carried his eyes in his hands, or maybe I'm thinking of a character from a different thing. But some of you will know who I'm talking about. He mentions that the world used to have like purple cliffs, a metal desert, and some other things that kind of sound like Undertale's world, but we'll get to that too. And if I recall, you're going to be hearing that a lot. I swear there's another NPC. Maybe it's him, or maybe it was someone else, but someone mentions the world being more black and white back in the day. Very curious, obviously. Given this, I genuinely think there are older versions of Deltarune in like a beta game sense. Like if it truly is a game that they are in, it is slowly being developed over time into something, more and more, I don't know, detailed. A concept to that could lead to a lot of cool things, like remnants of old code or deleted characters that used to be there. People that can still be there with you in the dark if there are remnants of their code. The same way you data mine a game and you find some stuff, Actually, speaking of which, the with you in the dark line could apply to a lot of different things. You could think it's something like, Gaster, Des. You could think that it's everybody in this game. including the Lighteners too, which we'll get to as well. But it could be a line meant for you, meant for everyone. Actually, speaking of with you in the dark, there is, the man behind the tree. He mentions he's been forgotten many times before by Chris. He also seems to exist in a different layer of the game. You actually have to make an effort or be lucky to even find some of his spots, which are areas that never feel like they should be there. And while Chris can maybe see them, we can't, the player. Part of me wonders if there's an actual physical person there, or just code of someone that once existed that Chris is just perceiving themselves in a different way, you know? Let's continue off of that though. In Chapter 4's Egg Room, you're in a hospital. The area has color, but still has that retro look to it, as if the game developed a bit more in this time. It's a different point of time, but more in the future, you know? There's a couple doors here, but if you go to the room between, and yes, we're absolutely making parallels here, I recall Chris trying to paint someone only to find that they couldn't, and it just ends up in some scribbles, and then a tree is painted over it, which it seems like a way to mask trauma, but could also be related, obviously, to the man and something else, maybe. There feels like there's a lot of layers to this, physically and mentally, but I guess we'll find out. Actually, a fun thing I noticed here when watching a friend replay the game, when Chris washes their hand, the narration talks about a gray mark on their hand or something, like a shining gray mark in between their fingers or something, and it's something that they can't remove. It pretty much made me immediately think about the monochrome line and the vessels from the start of the game, because if I recall, the vessels are monochrome, and I mean, they talked about, all monochrome things are copies. There's a lot to be unpacked there. I don't know, it's just really interesting. There's a lot about Chris we don't know, and I'm very excited to see what else we get. Anyway, let's play devil's advocate for a 7 and say that this thing truly is a big old Gaster plot. Oh good, voice cracks, you're having puberty again. If so... Sorry, rambling. If so, there is a small part of me that thinks the Forgotten Man is actually Gaster as well, or what's left of him after, the rest of them left the game. I was also wondering if maybe on top of being a scientist, he was also a doctor. I do genuinely think he was part of Hometown at one point, and Chris, amongst, the other residents of Hometown, visited him, if he was a doctor. Of course, I'm pulling this because of the hospital egg room, and that specific room being a room in between two other hospital doors, and there's a lot of parallels people were pulling there, especially with like Sans' and Papyrus's house, and how you could perfectly fit, the Gaster room right in the middle, and the sprites and everything match up, which we'll get to more of that too. It's very interesting. Either way, this could be a pretty good way to explore his curiosity as a scientist, because if he's a doctor and all these monsters are visiting him, Chris is visiting him, that's a pretty good way to look at the anatomy of everyone, and we're going into headcanon for a little bit here, but maybe upon looking at the bodies of all these creatures, maybe he notices that something is off, or he notices the whole determination thing with Chris and the power that's capable from that. It could go hand in hand. This could have even been one of the first things to open his eyes about the world he lives in. Either that, or the area being a hospital was more of like a metaphor. His room being in between could be symbolic. Perhaps Chris did run into him, but not exactly in this manner. Either way, I don't doubt there might have been some experiments. Not in the best way, but There's also Susie mentioning, I think it's in Chapter 5 Weird Route, I'm not too sure, but she mentions that Sans' house is newer in Hometown, and she can't exactly remember when it appeared there. It might have replaced something, maybe even where Gaster or someone else used to be. If the Forgotten Man is someone else, maybe they were there. I don't know. Also, there's one thing to add that I forgot about. I clearly wrote my apologies in brackets here, so my apologies. In the NES game that you play in Chapter 3, dubbed The Sword Route, puberty again, if we get really meta, maybe the world did actually look like that at one point. Maybe it's just another period of Deltarune's world development. And yeah, it has connections to the Weird Route and other things, but I'll talk about that in a second as well. I wanted to mention though that when the player got really strong, they left the screen and ascended to like the next world layer. And if I recall, they also walk up to Chris, the person, observing and quote-unquote playing the game, and they strike them. At least I think they used their sword on Chris. Either way, I think this is meant to be a huge parallel to something we haven't seen yet, and I'm sure some of you are thinking what I'm thinking. We already have someone observing the world other than us, and we already have what looks like Chris and Noelle possibly leaving the game, or at least leaving this layer of the game. There could be multiple layers. Deltarune could just be, one. Okay, wow, yeah, that was a long one, so I'm gonna do some short ones and then get to another big boy, and yes, that is what I wrote in my notes, which will be me talking nonsensically. Is nonsensically a word? Either way, I'm gonna be nonsensical and talking about Deltarune's connection to Undertale. Good English. Theory 2, the game has time loops, but every loop is slightly different. So I'm sure a few people are on board with this too. I've been thinking about this one since maybe chapter 1, and it wasn't even because of the narrative at first. I thought about it because, 1, my favorite plots tend to fall under sci-fi/time plots, so I kind of keep an eye out for these things. But 2 is this game has a lot in common with Higurashi. Has anyone else really noticed that? If you're a Higurashi fan, I'm going to be vague here about the Higurashi plot, but if you don't want any kind of spoilers at all for it, you can feel free to just skip to the timestamp above. Sadly, I'm just going off of the anime here. I never played the visual novel. I might try it sometime. But if you've seen the anime, it does take place in a small town, which is, oh, crazy. Oh my god, Shady, you genius. But no, there's actually more. There's a festival right before things go down. There's crazy things happening underground. The main characters, which are all pretty much kids, talk about one of the main character's siblings going missing. And if I recall, that character even used the bat. And plenty of tragedy happens to said kids, because of course, I guess it just has to. God damn. But once all the horrible things go down, time is reset. And every time, the plot plays out slightly differently on each reset. Someone may go insane and start killing people, but it's not necessarily the same person each time. And hell, if you want to count the reboot of the anime, which is secretly a sequel, once again, you can skip ahead if you don't want to hear this, big spoilers, timestamps right there. There is a moment where even after the plot ending, one of the characters gets thrown back to the beginning, the character who time loops. And part of that is because one of the other main characters becomes aware of the time loops for reasons and starts making it happen themselves. Are you seeing any parallels or possible parallels there? By the way, extra thing to add to that, there is a doctor who does science work secretly underground. So, I just thought I should throw that in there too. At least I recall that that's that. Anyways, back to Deltarune. I do think the game story has already happened at least a few times. Maybe. I think when the prophecy mentions the heroes, it doesn't necessarily have to be the characters that we have now. Especially Susie, but we'll get to her. This is a bit of a loose theory, but I do wonder if Azrael and Des were past main characters, because they kind of fit some of those prophecy window descriptions, don't they? Maybe they did the normal route, maybe they did the weird route. Either way, I do think they quote-unquote left the game and are just somewhere else beyond that. Or maybe they became the knight in Eram. Eram? Or, you know, remnants of them became those two things. But maybe we'll get to that too. There's already possible holes with that theory, especially if you think about when Des might have gone missing, but we're just spitballing. It can maybe explain some of the friend enemies appearing during the Eram fight, though. It's close. I saw some posts on Twitter mentioning this, but with our knowledge of the new shop dialogue in Chapter 5, maybe they appeared there for Eram, but they instead made the friends an obstacle for you. Because it does sound like breaking the boundaries of the game or becoming more aware of what's happening around you lead to these things coming after you. And yes, I am very aware of the bird, and he freaks me out. And I just want to move his head so I can straighten him into a proper line. I don't really know if that was a threat or just a shape that bothers me. Anyways, this next bit of spitballing actually comes from JR Vanity's theory on who the knight is. I'll put a link to their video in the description. I don't want to spoil what they said because they put a lot of effort into the video, so I'm just gonna have you guys check out the link. There's also a card above if you want to click on it. I'll just take one point they said from that video because I thought about this part as well, at least. There are clearly two very prominent routes here. Toby mentioned that there's only one ending, though. I think the weird route's gonna conclude with a time loop. I think what we're watching is not just an alternate route, but more like a prequel. Like, the weird route probably happens first, and then moves on to the route that we have now. The Chapter 3 NES game having weird route moments in it, and even the retro graphics, was a symbolic way of showing what happened before, like some grim reminder to help push you in another direction, or make you repeat the weird route, it really depends. One last thing, but when Gerson faces Susie, she mentions that she'd want the story to go on forever as well, which could mean nothing, could just be her perception of things ending, but it could be an allusion to her possibly being the one who inevitably resets when things don't go right. If the time loop thing is real, I'd like to think Chris is very aware of it being a human, there's the whole determination thing, very much a Frisk parallel, so yeah, that would suck a lot. Okay, Theory 3, the Knight. It's Papyrus, we're done. Okay, no, real talk. When I was streaming the game, I did genuinely think it might be him at first, and then I kept the, I kind of kept the bit going just to mess with my community, because they have a good time with it too. At the same time, though, since Chapter 3, I did wonder if the Knight was some kind of amalgam of everyone who hasn't shown up since the start of the game, in this case, Des, Azrael, Papyrus, whoever else, because the body proportions do look like his. Then there's Des's antlers, and my blind self legit thought that when the Knight, roared, for lack of a better word, the inside of its chest kind of looked like Flowey, which would be kind of like an Azrael parallel. I don't really believe this as much anymore due to new theories that came out, but if it happened, it would still be pretty crazy. Sorry, I almost backhanded my water bottle. Hope you didn't hear that. And you might be thinking, well, Des and Azrael are more important to the narrative, but if this is a Gaster plot, there's no way he isn't related to Sans and Papyrus. So the Skelebros might have a huge role to play yet, Sans at the very least, but I do think there's some Papyrus stuff going on, which we're going to talk about in this video as well. Alright, let's finish this up with the big one. Theory 4. Deltarune is definitely connected to Undertale. I've had a lot of people want to fight me just for believing this, and it's okay to have a different opinion in view. We don't actually have the answer yet. But it is fun to let people just imagine things, whimsy and all that. So allow me to have a little fun and just fixate on this for a little bit. This might be completely wrong of a video, but it's fun, right? I have a lot of reasons for thinking Deltarune's connected to Undertale. You know, is it a prequel or a sequel? The funny part is, I actually don't think it matters. The answer could actually just even be yes to both. The first time I personally noticed was in Chapter 1. I thought it was just some funny meta joke at first, but the whole game is meta. It's about being meta at times, and there's symbolism and references everywhere that you look. When you talk to Undyne, one of your choices, you, the soul, is to mention Alphys, someone that Undertale, someone that Undyne doesn't even know in this game, which she does confirm herself. When you talk to Sans, you have a dialogue choice that makes it sound like you're seeing him again. Then he tells you it's your first time meeting while also winking at you. I think it's canon that the soul remembers the events of Undertale as well as Sans, or maybe it's just us, the player, in the form of a soul, then in Christ. I don't know how many layers there is to this. Not to mention there's a whole Chapter 5 moment now where Sans asks for a drawn picture of you, and, you know, Susie draws Chris, herself, and Rouse on it. It matches up with the picture of 3 people in Sans' secret room in Undertale, and it is something people have theorized since Chapter 1. Especially since Don't Forget is written on the picture, and that's a significant quote in Deltarune. On top of the house mysteriously appearing one day and him saying he's from out of town, quote unquote, since we're talking about, you know, the boundaries of the town. It also seems that he brought Grillbees over. I know the logo position doesn't match up perfectly with the original Grillbees from Undertale, but it is literally the same font and build, if I'm recalling correctly here. I do truly wonder if he found some way to just move stuff over, and if so, how did he do that? He did also like Grillbees a lot, to the point where he said he was going there when he was dying, while also asking his dead brother if he wants anything. Obviously, we hear the noise of him passing away in that scene, but wouldn't it be crazy if he meant all of that kind of literally? Probably not. I don't see it as real, but it's just a funny thought. Part of me wondered if this was meant to be a continuation or if that was foreshadowing. You know, what if Papyrus is only an Undertale thing? Maybe he doesn't necessarily exist here, but Sans still remembers him. Or he is still around in some form, but kind of like the mystery Eggman. Or he's just an awkward shut-in, and this is just going to be a gag where he shows up in the final second of Chapter 7 to tell some dumb pun. Either way, I do think Papyrus not showing himself is a deliberate plot point, and I feel like he might have only told Chris about this. I don't think anyone else has ever addressed Sans having a brother, and for all we know, maybe he was telling Chris, or maybe he was telling us, the player. Actually, that can't be true, because I think Sans mentions that when Azrael comes back, if they can all hang out, which is actually a very, very interesting line the more and more I think about it. That is kind of, that is something to think about there. There is more, apparently. I wrote down a lot more here, apparently. As I mentioned earlier, there's some NPCs that talk about an older world. One of them mentioned, you know, the purple cliffs and some of the areas that sound like Undertale, which is, you know, possibly a connection. When certain Undertale characters end up in dark worlds, they parallel their Undertale counterparts. Undyne looks like a knight, Toriel and Asgore look like a king and queen, so on and so forth. Getting to the egg room in Chapter 3, which shows, you know, an older world, involves doing a trick to break a battle sequence. And in this same fight, you're facing enemies from Undertale. These could all be fun Easter eggs, but let's be real here for a second. Underneath the Queen's Castle, there's a dark purplish area, which also shows up at times in the Chapter 3 NES game, Sword Route. Watch Root's Theory if you want to have your mind blown, by the way. So much to think about from that video, and people are still quoting it. Either way, you find the Mettaton Neo body down there, covered in vines like it's been there for a while. Looking at that room, it almost seems like there could have been copies of the same body stored away. There's other gaps in the wall where there could have been other bodies stored. Hell, maybe they could have been makeshift vessels to be possessed. Maybe there's a parallel here. There seems to be a few parallels like that about a soul and a body and attaining some level of freedom, whether it be the Mew Mew fight or spammed in Neo. Either way, it's weird that it's here, especially if this basement area is meant to foreshadow or be an omen or connected to another area we haven't seen yet. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Also notice how the Roots areas are all purple. I can't believe I'm pulling purple parallels again after my Xenoblade Theory video where purple is also a prominent color. Anyways, the first time you ever enter the Dark World, it's a purple area. It's the purple cliffs. And everything else that exists there on the cliffs are monochrome in some way. White, black, gray, monochrome. There's also piles of dust that make a noise when you break them. I always thought that this was some old land full of dead monsters, but who knows? I mean, there's just a lot of dust. but maybe it's a land we also once knew. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. At first I thought maybe, underneath the town is a big dark world and it's just, Undertale down there. I was watching someone play Undertale recently and I noticed in the cutscene where Frisk climbs the mountain and enters the cave and falls, the cave entrance looks super similar to the shelter entrance. Once again, cave entrances are just holes in a wall, but even so, it looks pretty damn similar. If I recall, there's even vines hanging off of it. And once again, they fall down a deep hole, and in this hole, you have game mechanics you can manipulate, and a weird skeleton man who's watching and listening at all times. There's parallels. Actually, at first, when I played Chapter 1, I thought someone took Undertale and literally scrambled it in all of its assets, like the characters and such, which is why Deltarune is an anagram of Undertale. I thought that could be fun wording. The Deltarune's an important plot point, but the scrambling is also symbolic in a way. And of course, that also could tie to Ralsei being an anagram of Asriel. Do I think Ralsei is literally Asriel? I don't really know. I think it could be a remnant. It could be a memory of Asriel manifest. Some people are saying Ralsei is literally the darkness itself or the roots underneath the town. There's so many different theories and it's all very interesting. Anyways, maybe upon witnessing the events of Undertale, Gaster made Deltarune. Maybe he even made up the entire prophecy just to see if people will always make it happen or if it'd eventually break with enough determination. Maybe he set these boundaries for NPCs to escape. In the fight with Gerson in Chapter 4, he does mention someone falling into their own story creation or something like that, which parallels Gaster's backstory in Undertale by a lot. It's him falling into his creation and being spread everywhere. It's the same thing. Just spitballing random things. I don't necessarily think some of these will happen, but if they do, awesome. You can tell I was sleep-deprived typing this because the next line is, "We also can't forget about sand with the photo." Yes, good job. We already talked about that, Shady, but thank you. Love sand. But it could just be that, maybe the events are ordered in a way where, like, Gaster falls in something and moves to another lair. Undertale happens. He sees everything that happens in Undertale and then makes Deltarune, trying to analyze the effects of determination. Either that, or maybe Undertale is the end result, and the only way to talk about this part is to introduce a final extra theory. So bonus time, Theory 5, how it ends. So, Toby said there's one ending and that there's something more important than reaching the ending, or something like that. I took some time to think about what he might have meant by that, and then I thought about the game over screen. If you choose to not continue, I think it says the world is covered in darkness and then the game just kind of ends. And it made me think, that's the ending. That's it. Because think about it, when you beat the game eventually, you're going to have to close it or quote-unquote end the program. It's always going to go black no matter what. I think the important part is how you go about getting to that ending. Maybe everyone chooses to accept their fate and they're grateful for just getting to experience some form of life. Or, maybe the weird route just ends it all abruptly by breaking everything, if the weird route isn't a prequel or a past loop. Maybe you find a way to allow the characters to leave the hometown, to be bits of code somewhere out there on a different layer. Maybe as a result, they all get to be free and the final moments of the game is just an empty hometown that you yourself finally get to look at and shut down. Which would be, honestly, a really, really bittersweet feeling ending. And in turn, that would allow you to leave too. This comes back to a point I made earlier, but the whole, don't forget I'm with you in the dark, could once again be a message for us. Maybe we don't want to say goodbye to all of them, but even in the dark, our memories of them allow them to exist outside of that. Classic kind of JRPG writing, which, by the way, I love this. And it's a real thing. I mean, if you remember someone, that's a part of them always with you. In the dark or wherever. So that could be one of the meanings of the lyric or the quote. Or maybe hometown gets covered in a dark world and it becomes Undertale. The Lightners seem to reflect their Undertale counterparts in some way when they're in the dark world, sorta. Maybe hometown becoming a dark world also makes it into a big kingdom. The only hole in this one is all the characters going to the surface at the end, and of course there was no mention at all of the Titans here, so or the Roaring, so obviously there's some holes here. And I don't believe in this next part, but maybe when everyone got to the surface, maybe someone hit the reset button really hard this time. Because now that they've seen the determination in action, maybe they can change something in hometown, in Deltarune. They're like, wait a minute, we can do that? Maybe Sans, with the memories of Undertale, now has a bit more faith after seeing how determination allowed the monsters to be freed, and how stagnation is something that can be ended. Who knows? Maybe some of that is true. Maybe I need to see a doctor for tinfoil hat disease. I don't know. You're in luck, guys. Turns out there's actually one more thing I wanted to yap about. So, next theory, Susie's the main character, and maybe not all monster. I feel like, once again, this is a thing that everyone else is thinking of, or at least most people. But she's always made her own choices, especially in the first chapter when she goes on without you certain times. She fights on her own. She can cancel your dialogue when you want to make a choice. The only reason you control her in battles later is because she lets you tell her what to do. I did think at one point that maybe something happens with sneaky old little Chris Chris there, and maybe Susie, being aware of us, the soul, lets us join her for the ending. There is a small part of me that thinks she might be part human. She bleeds when she shatters the prophecy window. She's also aware of how to clean blood when seeing Chris's little soul cage with the blood stain. And I know some people are going to say Sans bled in Undertale, and maybe people from Hometown can bleed. Maybe that's another connection to Sans being a Deltarune character originally. But I do recall a character in one of the apartment windows asking Chris what it's like to be filled with blood. And could be a funny gag, but I don't know. And feel free to correct me on this one. Some people might have to go back and check, but I'm almost sure this was a thing. But when the crew meets Orange, Orange believes that, they themselves are a human. Ralsei then makes some kind of quip saying humans don't have tails, right, Susie? And after that interaction, Susie says something like, why did you ... never mind. And this could be Susie, once again telling Ralsei like, hey, like, why don't you lay off? Why are you being so mean? But it could also be like, hey, why did you ask me and not Chris that? I don't know, I just thought that line was kind of strange. Also, just throwing this in too, maybe Sans could have bled because, I mean, he is like a human skeleton. Well, maybe, I don't know, the proportions are a little funny, but he could also have part human or some kind of human trait about him, which, skeleton, but who knows? Anyway, sorry everyone, I wrote something in all caps here. I must have been really sleep deprived at this point. It says, also something Des disappeared on Christmas, something. 12/25 is December 25th. Good job, Shady. Noelle doesn't want to acknowledge it, but her room in Chapter 2 Cyberworld has the date marked around it, which is true. When Tenna recalls the families, watching him back in the day at the TV in the room, there actually is a Christmas tree in the room, and Des is the first silhouette to disappear. Sorry, I wrote Des up here. Good job, me. Awesome. But yes, there is something significant with the holiday and Christmas and December and snow and ice. There's a lot there. Anyways, hey, thanks for listening, guys. I think that's it for now. I think I have a lot more that I want to talk about. I even think maybe there's the thought that Des could have been part human or just a human as well. Maybe they wore little deer antlers the same way we know Chris wore, monster horns. That could have been a fun parallel between them. And if Des was part human, Des could have also filled a role in the prophecy in another loop. So on and so forth. There's a lot there I want to talk about, but we're going to end it here for now. I just, apologies if this wasn't as organized as the Xenoblade Theory video, but that game is brand new, and this game has been unfolding a huge plot for like 8 years now. So of course there's going to be a bunch of theories everywhere. I had fun talking about this though, and I hope you had fun too. If you guys are interested and you want to see more rants like this or whatever else, this is a channel just to be comfy about one of my favorite hobbies. This is much more of a hobby channel than anything, so it's just fun to talk about games and all that. There's also going to be funny highlights. I might be having some Deltarune highlight videos as well if you want to see my condensed playthrough and all of that. I do have a channel for my full stream VODs called Shady Cicada Gaming Full Streams. So if you want to see some of my stuff, some of my streams, you can go over there. If you want to see my streams live, I do also have a Twitch, twitch.tv/shadycicada. You can catch me there. I try to stream at least twice or 4 times every week. It really depends on my schedule. But you can always come by. Sometimes I do, most of the time I'm just doing chill video game stuff, but sometimes I do music stuff as well, including trying to recreate certain video game songs from memory. We are going to be doing some Chapter 5 Deltarune songs at some point. So if you want to come on by, feel absolutely free to. I hope you guys had a good, comfy time just listening. And I hope, I'm new to this kind of structure of video. So I would like to keep doing it and get better at it and see how it goes. I love talking about stuff. I have some other rants and other things I want to talk about coming. So yeah, you guys take it easy. Have yourselves a lovely week, and I will catch you again soon. Goodbye.